In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 steps, 3 tips, 3 phases for any MCAT prep program to make sure that you're getting that 515, 520 score, and I'm going to do it in less than 5 minutes. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John. I'm a third-year medical student. I scored in the 90th percentile on my MCAT, and then before going back to medical school, I spent a couple years tutoring for some of the big-name companies that you're familiar with. Most recently started this YouTube channel, Informing Future Doctors, so I could kind of share some of the secrets that are kept behind the pretty steep paywalls. Now, if you're just getting started on your MCAT journey, or you are halfway through it or self-studying, then this video is perfect for you. But also, say you've invested in one of those high-dollar MCAT programs, it's really important that you take ownership of your own studying and make sure that these 3 key components are implemented into your daily studies. Yes, technically the company should be making sure that you're doing all of these, but at the end of the day, it is your score, it's your life, it's your gap year that you're going to have to take if you don't get it right. So make sure that you're doing it right. The first of these 3 components is content. And this is what most of you get right. Content is referencing all the sciences that you need to do well on the chemistry and physics, the biology, biochem, and the psychology and sociology sections of the exam. Theoretically, you should have learned all of it in your undergraduate, and then your MCAT prep should just be one big review. Unfortunately, that's not always how it works, or at least I know it wasn't for me. So the most time-consuming in the first part of any prep program is to learn all of the content. And I have a couple big pet peeves about content. The first is that I think most students spend too much time on content. The MCAT is fairly predictable in what they're going to ask. And if you read those giant MCAT prep program books, yes, you will have learned all the content that the MCAT can ask, so you will absolutely be okay. But there's only like 200 questions on the MCAT, 230 or something like that, and about 50 of those are cars. So that means you've only got like 150, 180 questions that are actually going to test you on the sciences, and several of those sciences are going to be repeated. The sciences that are most frequently tested on the MCAT are what you kind of colloquially hear as the high yield sciences, and that's really what IFD does best, is try to identify those high yield sciences. But regardless, whether you are learning via lectures, or maybe you're using Khan Academy videos through our free program, or you're learning through a big prep program, the most important thing of your content is to make sure that you actually conceptualize the stuff that you're going through. Memorizing facts is good, and honestly it's necessary for a good portion of this, but it's kind of like the gateway. It's like the first step to truly learning something. The MCAT is not going to ask you definition questions. You'll have to be able to apply it to various scenarios. So if you can't give multiple definitions for the same concept and apply it to multiple scenarios, then you probably don't truly understand it. The second phase of a really good MCAT prep program is strategies, and this is kind of like that pie in the sky thing that every company does a little bit different. We have an entire playlist dedicated to those strategies that I used to teach for those big companies and that I teach through IFD now. Really what those strategies are, in a nutshell, is if you think of the term a quote good test taker, what does that really mean? It's hard to become a good test taker if you're not naturally one. So what we did with the strategies, and we're not the only company that has done this, we're just the only ones that have made it free. We took all those strategies that we process as we're going through reading a passage, going through the questions, eliminating the bad ones, picking out the distracting answer choices, avoiding mistakes and things like that, and you package them and you give them a name and you give them a system so that students, whenever they're first learning these strategies, they actually have like an algorithm to work through the passage. So you've got to know your content so that you actually know the sciences to answer the questions, but you also have to know your strategies, because the difficult part of the MCAT is figuring out what they're actually giving you and what they're actually asking you. If you don't know those things, then you don't know which answer to pick. The strategies help you do that. And the last part of any good MCAT prep program is practice questions. And let me tell you, you need to be doing more practice questions than you already are. People that work more practice questions score better on the exam. Now, you have to obviously review those practice questions, and a little tip for the MCAT that may not be necessarily true for all the other standardized exams is that on the MCAT, when you miss a question, you need to assume that you did not miss that due to a content gap. If every single time you miss a question, you're like, oh, well, I just didn't know that fact, I'll add a flashcard so that I know it from now on. That's good, you need to do that if you didn't know the concept, but you also need to look and see if there were workarounds, because usually what ends up happening is students think that they missed a question because they have a content gap, when in reality, the content that they think they missed is actually beyond the scope of the MCAT. And what the MCAT authors actually wanted you to do is use a more fundamental science so that you could figure out the correct answer choice. A good example of this would be talking about some of the flow of like solutes and ions in the nephron of the kidney. Now, if you know all about everything that happens in the proximal convoluted tubule and all the ions that flow across and how that ends up creating a more conducive environment for the flow of water in the kidney, that's great. You'll get the question right. But also, if you truly understand things like gradients and diffusion, you'll also get the question right. If you're using the appropriate strategies, you know that basic science, and you've done your practice passages. So regardless of whether you're a first-time MCAT studier or you're taking the test in 2 weeks, please make sure that you're implementing these 3 steps for MCAT studying, and that is learn your content, practice your strategies, and take just an unholy amount of practice questions. Where you're getting the practice questions is not nearly as important as the fact that you are taking those practice questions. If you don't have any clue where to start, then check the link in the description for our free MCAT course where it has all of these built into it. But if you are already started and you are just wanting to make sure that you're doing the right thing, then implement these 3 phases. And if you learned something, hit that subscribe button and please share this with your friends, your colleagues, your pre-med advisors, your pre-med groups. It's really important to me that I be able to grow this channel to try to give away free advice to more people like yourself. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.